Being compliant, FedRAMP, SOC 2, blah, 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 ISO 27001, you name them all, that doesn't mean you're secure, right? It does mean that you've done some good shit along the way, and some auditors came in and checked your stuff off. So, as we go through a compliance journey, don't be in a false sense of security. As an example, MFA fatigue. If you had MFA deployed across all your employees, anytime they're going to access an application, that's important because you're doing first factor using in password, and we all reuse passwords like they're candy, and we don't care. So your target account, for your shopping, you may have reused the same password at your work. May have not, hopefully, maybe use a password manager. But that second factor 10 years ago, or longer for us at Adobe, was supposed to mean if your first factor was compromised, your password, the second factor could be an RSA token, or it could be a push notification. That would keep you out of trouble. Well, the problem is the way applications are built, most of them are built this way, is they want your first factor first, and then your second factor. And if they know you're using in password, all it takes them to do is write a script that will continually log in with the first factor, and you'll get the second factor push, and eventually your phone just keeps blowing up, and you're like, okay, screw it, I'm just going to hit yes. So you keep getting the notification, and now your phone's pretty useless because you're always getting that notification until you hit yes, and that's an easy attack, and it's just reusing your credentials, doing the push notification. Now, if you build the app slightly different and you've done the second factor first, that's cool. Some of the stuff that we're doing is we inject ourselves into that workflow and we enforce other things so that really starts to get in the way and disrupt the bad actors, workflow of attack. Because, they're following certain workflows themselves, right? So how can we disrupt that stuff?
But that improves your chances of success like a lot by just putting second factor first, and it's just so simple, right? It's like a simple thing, and so that's where I think absolutely compliances and security. FedRAMP's different. FedRAMP definitely hits different than like SOC 2 or ISO 27001, which or PCI, which is like point in time. FedRAMP is like legit
gnarly.
So tough.
It's gnarly.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's another Paramify podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Scott, and today's awesome, guys. Today we're joined by Den Jones, who's the Chief Security Officer at SonicWall, a veteran in cybersecurity. And what's cool about this one, guys, is that Den and we have some history. We were both leaders in cybersecurity at Adobe at a great time. At the time, Adobe was transitioning from shipping DVDs and software. The security is a different problem. We can talk about that. Then we'll get into that. But then when you go to putting your products in the cloud, security is not a nice to have, it's a must have. So that's kind of a weird intro, but that's our background. And Den, I'm so pumped to have you here, man. He's had so many different roles in security, talks at all the events. Everybody knows who Den is, and he's got a great podcast also, Get It Done. And I'm excited to be on that sometime. But anyways, Den, thanks for being on the show, man.
What's up, man? Hey, thanks for having me. This is awesome. We have actually talked about this for, I don't know, months over the year. So to finally get time to catch up, we did catch up at the pre-ski event, that the first one that was awesome. So I want to be back there. Actually, maybe back as a sponsor would be good. So for me, that's going to be awesome to check out. And then Banyan Security, I was the chief security officer there for a couple of years. I ran IT and security. I done the road show. I talked about zero trust. They are really an SSE zero trust kind of play. And then we were acquired by SonicWall, and then as part of that acquisition, and in January that was announced, I became the CSO at SonicWall. And in this adventure, we're going to build out the office of the CSO. I always love a new adventure, so I'm always saying, hey, check this space. You never know what's coming soon. And before the Banyan stuff, we were at Adobe together. I ran enterprise security. I was at Adobe for 20 years, so I wore a lot of hats.
Man.
Everything in infrastructure and operations, I pretty much got my teeth into for many years. Since December 99, I joined Adobe in Edinburgh. And then I went to Cisco for a year and a half, and I'd done some enterprise security there. In both of those positions, I reported to the C-level person whose boss's boss was the CEO. So, those were pretty meaty roles. And like you say, it's funny, right? Because that Adobe journey, you've got this, we ship things every 18 months, and it's a box, and it's a CD or a DVD. And the problem there from a security perspective is counterfeit. They're going to steal our shit. They mass produce these things, and we're fighting that fight. And then internally, you weren't thinking, especially before like introducing VPNs, you weren't really thinking about people getting in and hacking your stuff. And then as that evolves and the cloud thing evolves, the one thing you and I know is that also means governance evolved, and the compliance and the things that went along with audit, and then working with legal and all these things, that evolution, it just seemed like, I don't know, man, from 2004, 5-ish, all the way to like COVID 2020, whatever that was. It was just like a whirlwind of, I think, opportunity. You and I, we got to really do some fun stuff.
Totally.
So I guess that's a long way of saying I've done this shit a little while, and these gray hairs, I've earned them. I've bloody earned these guys,
Yeah, man. I've got some too. They're not really showing up, but like if I grow out my peach fuzz, man, it's all
dude,
great.
you still look like you're 12. I mean, geez, man, come on.
I actually get carded all the time when I get NyQuil. I don't drink, right? But like, they're like, I'm like, are you serious, man? Like, yeah, you just got to.
I think it's the quantity. When you're doing a 12-pack of NyQuil or a 24-pack, they're probably like, I know you don't drink, Kenny, but what the fuck?
Yeah. All right, we all have our vices, right? I forget it, right?
Yeah. Mine is buying vinyl.
Okay.
I don't get carded for that much.
For buying vinyl? Like, well, okay. What was your last? Me now. What was your last vinyl purchase?
I actually just bought the latest Pet Shop Boys album. It's really funny. My first ever vinyl as a kid was Pet Shop Boys, Please. And actually, the vinyl you see on the wall behind me there, right?
Okay.
There. That white one. That was my first ever vinyl that I got as a kid. My brother gave it to me for birthday or Christmas, and I framed it because I now have another remastered version of it. But I bought this Pet Shop Boys one recently. One before that was like an Oasis album. So I've just been going through buying stuff that I know is not in the collection. So yeah, man, it's an addictive thing, I played the vinyl, and you love that little crackle, the little warmth of it,
Yeah, that's my so one of our guys on our team, he's an engineer on our team. So a lot of us are musicians at Paramify, right? So I have a history, like I was in a band for a long time. We recorded, we were on the radio, all this. I was an analog boy on analog radio, man. How cool is that?
Oh, wow,
man. Come on, man. Yeah.
Dude, I'm the same. Look, I've got vinyl up on the wall there that I released in the 90s. Yeah. And I show my kids, I'm like, I used to play gigs and I was on the radio and I've got vinyl. Like, a lot of people can't say that today,
I'm not an audiophile. Like, to me, like I can't hear the difference between like an MP3 that you ripped off of Napster, to something that, to like a CD or something. I just don't, I guess I can kind of hear it, right? Sometimes, but
When you got it from Napster, then you listen to it on Winamp. You're kind of like you're listening to some crunchy shit at that point. You're like, I don't know, man. That doesn't sound as good as my CD.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
I'm not an audiophile either, by the way. I am not quite there. I like good shit, but I'm not there.
Yeah. No, we actually had, so one of our podcasts, we were, my friend Neil, we had him on. He has this pretty cool AI company for doing hiring for mass, taking in 500 resumes and finding the best one. It's really great. I was talking to Neil, and we were going to talk about AI because it was back when AI was kind of cool at the very beginning of it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You think everybody's talked about AI now? We're kind of sick of it. It's like zero trust and digital transformation. We're like, I've heard enough of that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. But anyways, me and Neil, all we talked about was music for the first 30 minutes about all the bands we used to go see and oh, you were there too. And girls that anyways, I'm not going to get anyway.
You're like, oh no.
Wait. Yeah. I'm happily married. Right. Yeah. We're good.
Yeah.
So anyways, so cool. All right, man. So what is your favorite? So you've heard everything on Zero Trust because you were point man for security for Banyan. Oh, I need to tell one more funny anecdote about Banyan. It was so funny. I was texting you, Dan. You remember this? And it was at Black Hat, and I was just talking to a customer, and I went and I saw the Banyan room, and I'm like, oh, and I was just so stupid. I was so dumb. I was like, oh, Banyan, the Banyan room, and I'm like, dude, how did they get there? I'm like, dude, Dan, are you guys here in this Banyan room? He's like, oh yeah, no. It was so funny.
I remember that. I was like, this guy doesn't drink as well. I'm like, this guy doesn't even drink, and look at the shit that he's saying. I'm like 2 bottles of NyQuil in, and he's anyone's. We didn't. I always got there. You part of Banyan Vines, and I'm did you like Banyan Vines? I went, if so, yes. Did you hate them? If so, not. No, the banyan tree, it's roots of the network, it's shit like that. So,
I get it now. Now I understand why there was a Banyan room at where was it? Where was Black Hat? It was in Vegas.
It was in Mandalay Bay.
That's right. I was on the poor man's beginning, and we're still living in we're still hoteling at the poorest shops, right?
Yeah.
I was in it was nice enough, but I was in the Nirvana Hotel. And so it's across the street from Mandalay Bay, and it was I think $57 a night, and I booked it at the same time. Mandalay was I think 1,300 plus a night, and it was just so I'm like, the goal is not to die. The goal just don't die, and we didn't. I didn't. Right.
Yeah. I always stay at the Cosmo. I've been going there, the Cosmo or the Aria and stuff. I've been staying there for a number of years, and I just feel it's kind of in between the Mandalay Bay and then where DEF CON's going to be, right? Whatever the Paris or whatever the heck it's going to be this year. So I think it's the convention center. So we'll see, man.
I'm super generous with other people's money for sure, but when it's ours, and we bootstrap Paramify to what it is now, right? And so now we're taking cash, right? And so as soon as we get our funding, maybe we can
get some funding. Yeah, maybe you can get a king room or something.
Yeah, king room at the Nirvana Hotel. Yeah.
With a strip view or just a view of the tarmac.
Yeah, 100%. No, I like those guys. They're nice people, but it's a value play. Yeah.
It's okay, man. Play. Yeah, right. Let's get to business.
Yeah. Okay, man. So what is you were in Zero Trust. How do you explain Zero Trust to your mom or to somebody? How do you explain it to people?
Well, so yeah, look, I mean, one thing about leadership or being an executive, and you know this as well, right, is you have to take these concepts and you have to run into an environment where the people in the room don't necessarily know the technology, right? And what I would normally do is I would explain it to people. And by the way, a billion terms of zero trust. So the one I always focused on for Adobe was, and we done a 2017 deployment, then a 2019 with Banyan, because we wanted a more cloud thingy, Bob. Well, I can explain that in more detail later, but I want to stick to your question. So I always wanted the experience when the users are accessing apps and services that we can improve the security behind that. So the way I would explain it to the executives at Adobe was, would you like to log in less? When you access apps and services, do you want to have to go through a VPN, or do you just want to get to the app? I was like, would you like to change your passwords every 90 days because that's what you do? Or how about never again? Never change your password ever again. And this is 2017. And so the concept of ZT wasn't really as well known at that point. You know, Google had done their Beyond Corp, and we were reading their document that they published, and we're like, well, we can't afford to do that. We're going to do the poor man's version, right? So what we were doing is we done 3 things for security and 3 things for IT. So I report to the CSO and dotted line to the CIO. So with the CIO, I'd say we're going to do it so you never change your password ever again unless compromise indicator. That'll reduce service desk tickets. Service desk tickets are in the top 10 of volume of tickets, and they piss off your employees. There's 40,000 people every 90 days taking 15 minutes to change your password and recover from that shit. So I'd turn around to her and say things like that. And then I'd turn around to the security guy, the CSO, and I'd be like, hey, we're going to do no more passwords. We're going to use certificates. So credential theft, which is one of the biggest percentages of breaches, starts with credential theft. We're like, hey, we're going to eliminate that. I always use the words almost eliminate, right? You never want to be so factual that you're definitely 100% going to stop something that you know you're powerless to really stop. So I'd say almost eliminate that. And then I was like, and with this architecture, the strategy, we'll have the ability to almost eliminate lateral movement in the office networks. The goal being is you turn your office networks like a guest network. You enable something like a cookie cutter approach to deploy new networks. I can just deploy a network like Starbucks. I don't need to join them all together. That changes your M&A strategy. That changes your vendor strategy when you bring in companies with devices you don't trust. So the reality is you really explain it in terms of problems you're going to solve or a user experience you're going to improve. The most important thing for an executive is they want to know, will you save me money? That's it. You're going to spend how much? Does that save me money? And you're like, yeah, if I spend $500,000, I'm going to save you $3 million. You got to put it in those financial terms for the executives. At the end of it, I'm also going to improve the experience for 40,000 people. At Cisco, the team that I led there, we're 110,000 people.
Right.
Yeah, by the way, in Adobe, we deployed this, and the first deployment was 7 months, and Cisco was 5 months to 110,000 people. So we're doing something that's got to be done fast because people want results quicker, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of need, like we were just talking before earlier, experience is that thing you get right after you needed it. So you're going to take your lumps, you're going to take your lumps doing it. Like you said, you mentioned it, Adobe, and then you go to Cisco, and then you go to Banyan, and then, you're at SonicWall now because they acquired you, right? There's just no substitute for experience. You can't find it.
The other thing, and you know this, right, is security professionals. You get the ones that lose sight of the fact that really you're running a business. Mm-hmm. You're running a business. You're in business to make money. You're not in
Yeah.
business to be the most secure company in the world. So the balance that as a security leader you're trying to bring to the business is understand the business and the risks that that business are under. And then based on that, you're going to come up with strategies that reduce those risks to a level of tolerance which is acceptable to those executives.
Right.
Your goal isn't to turn around and do the Sans top bloody 10 and say, I'm going to do that 100%. That was like the old days of ITIL, where people will be like, let me get my ITIL Bible out and I'll do all the ITIL shit. And then they'll cripple the business because it's too process heavy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's always at odds, man. It is always at odds with the business. And so you gotta balance that. Real quick, let's just close up on zero trust. So you mentioned like Banyan, like in SonicWall now, like has these zero trust tools. So there's tooling. Do you view zero trust more as a practice, or is there a solution that you implement that's zero trust? What is
Yeah,
it
so
both?
there's not a one-stop vendor that's going to give you a zero trust solution. And really, you know, some people you'll see the vendors and their marketing team jump all over that shit. Like they're now jumping all over AI, right? Every vendor's an AI vendor these days. Like 5 years ago or 3 years ago, everyone was a zero trust vendor or SSE, you know, whichever Gartner acronym they give a shit about. I look at it like it's a strategy, it's a framework, set of principles, and you cherry pick from these things in order to secure your business. Because security is always defense in depth, right? So you might look at a zero trust architecture and you might say, well, look, I don't want to do packet capturing and sniffing the packet and see what's inside. Maybe I'm more concerned about my identity stack and making sure the identity stack is secure. Oh, but wait a minute. I'm struggling with knowing what devices access my apps and services and what networks they're on. And if you kind of look at it, it's like, well, zero trust. Zero trust what? I don't zero trust the network. So I don't trust the network you're on because more and more you're not on my network. So the old principles of I can do network type security and have a choke point. You don't have that same choke point as easily these days. That's why for us, like this whole edge security type thing, because the device is now more the security boundary as opposed to your firewall and your office network, you know? So I see it like it's a journey. I think a lot of people talk about it. There are more and more people, thankfully, that understand what it would mean to their business and how to get it started. And, you know, my podcast, yeah, get it started, get it done. By the way, I plan to change the bloody name of that because when people say, what's your podcast name? You're like, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, what? So maybe it's the accent though, but I do plan to get a simpler name in the future. So yeah, stay tuned there.
Yeah, you definitely have a very sexy accent, dude. I'm not gonna try to do it, and you know
No.
I just can't. All my kids though, they like. Well, I know like we're talking Australia, right? Like Bluey has really all my kids talking accents now. Like when they watch like they like,
Yeah.
but they all do it. They all were cheering for Australia in the Olympics, right? Like they all.
Really?
Anyways, like so, I know that's on the other side of the world, but man,
Yeah.
like people
Well,
like
you got to
an
know
accent, man.
Scottish and Irish, then Australian. Like when you look at the world's sexiest accents, you know,
100%.
we got some chops there. You know, we're kind of Scottish people. You know, we're shit at everything else. Don't ask us to win the Olympics or do great at sports, but you know, the accent or the drinking thing. You know, we're good at those things.
Yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and yeah. Anyway, you got okay. So, really, dude, I think that it's really important because I think people don't really understand a use case. Like, so someone, like you said, vendors will come talk to CISOs about what, you know, what a tool will do, what a solution will do. What are some like pragmatic, like stories, right? Where you would say like, man, if you had the practice of zero trust implemented, maybe this doesn't happen. Like like Kenny logs in from Kathmandu 3 a.m, like when he's on, something weird, right? Like, where does zero trust really help? Like, what stories
Yeah.
would you
I
see?
would say I would say first of all, Kenny probably isn't in Kathmandu. It's
Right.
probably some bad actor named, no, let's call him Bob actually, because I hate to bring which country has like, or maybe it's Vlad. I don't know. Sounds like Bob.
Yeah.
So Vlad's in Kathmandu on a Windows computer, but Kenny really logs in every day from Utah on his Mac,
Mm-hmm.
right? So are we doing some security intelligence? Are we taking advantage of the information that says, hey, well, wait a minute, I've not seen Kenny log in from this device before? Are we
Mm-hmm.
looking at one of the things for me, which I love about what we've been doing, is a device registered? Like, if you're using a cloud-based identity product, which more and more people are now, even if you've got on-prem AD, that still synchronizes to Azure in the cloud, right? And so Entra
100%.
ID. So I can log in as you from anywhere in the world if I know your username and password, and then I get your MFA, and with MFA fatigue, I've seen it, people, executives included, clicking that second factor, even though they're not logging in anywhere. They just see it pop up and they're like, oh, it must be me. And it's not. So the reality is Kenny doesn't log in from Kathmandu. We need a way to make sure we stop that. So the device is registered. That means that Kenny can actually only log in from the devices that Kenny registered himself. And that's one of the things that we do. And as part of that, we're doing a posture check on the device to make sure the device is at least up to date OS. We can put policies in place. Is Kenny a vendor or is Kenny an employee? Is Kenny in the finance group? Is Kenny in the engineering group? Does Kenny have admin access to production? You can create different things, and then that means I'm going to look for different checks and balances. But at the background, Kenny's not putting in his password because he's on a registered device and we're using a certificate that we issued. So the fun thing about this is when you talk about the experience that Kenny's going to have, it's a far quicker, easier experience to access the app that you want to log into, and you're more secure. And I don't know about you, but when you think of your company and your employees, would you rather them spend more minutes logging in a day or less minutes? Do you want
100%
more
less. We
friction?
want to enable
Yeah.
the business. You want to
Yeah.
enable them to do what they want, which is
Yeah.
what security is traditionally. We were talking about, what security used to be. It used to be kind of really at odds. And I know myself, right? I mean, I code, right? I've coded and I built things, and you're like, dude, like even building something like a unit test, which is not necessarily security, but it's like probably need to have that. Like, if you're not doing unit testing, are you really going to have security? Because it's going to perform in ways that you don't expect. And so, like,
Yeah.
all of that stuff like gets in the way of building things that are awesome, right? And
Yeah.
so that is always the case. And I think the collective mindset of security professionals, is just so much disgust that people don't care, that they just go to FUD and they go, look,
Mm-hmm.
and you just got to fight that as a CISO, right? You got to remember that you're
Yeah.
not in business just to be secure. You're in business to make the world a better place,
Yeah.
and so what can we
Well, the
do?
funny thing, yeah, I've said this many times on stage and on podcasts, and I kind of call bullshit on things. Any
Mm-hmm.
CEO that says security is their number one thing is talking shit.
That's
First of
right.
all they want to do is make sure they're not in the news for the wrong reasons. So my goal is to ensure that a business can be profitable in a way where the risk is tolerated at a level which we all agree is good enough or acceptable. People also hate me to use that term, good enough, right? But the reality is you don't want to spend $500,000 more or 100 grand more to get something better than it needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're not spending time on things that aren't as good as they need to be. Because you see, there's always a laundry list, a backlog of work of things that aren't as good as they should be. So the reality is get something to as good as it should be, and then start working on other shit that's not as good as it should be.
Right.
So if you're exceeding and you're spending more money on something to make it better than it needs to be, then you're wasting the company's money, or you're not getting to shit that needs done. So I got this whole view. You're there to help the business be profitable, keep them out the news, reduce friction. If you don't reduce friction, and I've seen this in many companies, engineers or your other users will find ways to circumvent security. Even if you write a policy, first of all, people don't read that policy shit anyway. But if you write a policy, then if they don't like it, they're still going to find ways around it, you know? So you got to be really thoughtful about what you're putting in place and what behaviors you're going to generate or change with these policies or these controls or any of these measures or whatever you do.
Yeah, 100%. You got to make it easy for people to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it really does take a village to raise the security program, because at the end of the day, like you said, executives, MFA fatigue, right? So maybe you could explain a little bit to our listeners what that is. That's an interesting one. That's kind of, that hackers will do anything, right? They don't care about your sticker. Hackers don't care about your compliance sticker. They don't care about your policy. They don't care about your SOC 2, whatever it is, or FedRAMP. They don't care. So
they don't care.
Tell us about MFA fatigue.
By the way, so being compliant, FedRAMP, SOC 2, blah, 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 ISO 27001, you name them all, that doesn't mean you're secure, right? It does mean that you've done some good shit along the way, and some auditors came in and checked your stuff off. So, as we go through a compliance journey, don't be in a false sense of security. As an example, MFA fatigue. If you had MFA deployed across all your employees, anytime they're going to access an application, that's important because you're doing first factor using in password. And we all reuse passwords like they're candy and we don't care. So your target account, for your shopping, you may have reused the same password at your work. May have not, hopefully. Maybe use a password manager. But that second factor 10 years ago, or longer for us at Adobe, was supposed to mean if your first factor was compromised, your password, the second factor could be an RSA token, or it could be a push notification. That would keep you out of trouble. Well, the problem is the way applications are built, most of them are built this way, is they want your first factor first, and then your second factor. And if they know you're using in password, all it takes them to do is write a script that will continually log in with the first factor, and you'll get the second factor push, and eventually your phone just keeps blowing up, and you're like, okay, screw it, I'm just going to hit yes. So you keep getting the notification, and now your phone's pretty useless because you're always getting that notification until you hit yes, and that's an easy attack, and it's just so. Reusing your credentials, doing the push notification. Now, if you built the app slightly different and you've done the second factor first, that's cool. Some of the stuff that we're doing is we inject ourselves into that workflow and we enforce other things so that really starts to get in the way and disrupt the bad actors, workflow of attack. Because, they're following certain workflows themselves, right? So how can we disrupt that stuff?
But that improves your chances of success like a lot by just putting second factor first. And it's just so simple, right? It's like a simple thing. And so that's where, I think, absolutely compliances and security. FedRAMP's different. FedRAMP definitely hits different than like SOC 2. Yeah. Or ISO 27001, which or PCI, which is like point in time. FedRAMP is like legit
gnarly.
So tough.
Gnarly.
It is gnarly. I think that the fatigue there comes from like documentation and maintaining that, but not let alone like the actual security that you have to implement. So
So I was just going to say, it's like these these things are great. So the compliance and frameworks are great to ensure that you're doing the right hygiene and you've got the right principles and the right methodologies and a lot of the right stuff in place, right? But it doesn't mean that the bad actors still can't get in. If you look at some of the companies that have been breached, and then you look at some of their certifications, you're going to go, well, wait a minute. And you'll realize that getting a certification doesn't mean you're safe. It doesn't mean you lose, you stop that due diligence and focus and stuff. So, but you want a minimum bar from a compliance perspective so that you can at least show your customers you're doing some of the basics.
Yep.
Banyan, we done our SOC 2. Funnily enough, we done our SOC 2 about 2019, 2020, because part of the Adobe deal, we wrote in the deal that we wanted Banyan to have their SOC 2 within the first 12 months. Yep. So that was long before I joined the company. But as a customer, we wanted them to have their SOC 2.
I know, man. Yeah, Adobe. Yeah, we have ours. We're doing that too. We're not even a seed round company, but we're doing that. So the expectation is there, absolutely. Fortunately, I know a guy, right?
Yeah, fortunately, you know a guy. You got the T-shirt. You've made the DVD.
Yeah.
You know. Now in Europe, it's funny though because in Europe they don't care as much about SOC 2 though, right? They care more about ISO 27001. Yeah. So or there's another one. Names escaped me, but Cyber Essentials or something like that.
Yeah,
Cyber Essentials Plus or something. So it really does differ.
I love the guys that do that. I love their material, Cyber Essentials Plus, just really pragmatic ways to implement security. Because again, you can have awesome security, but as soon as you have nefarious like collusion, right? Then it breaks all the control, right? That's rare, but absolutely it's we were just at Opera and we were talking about AI in security, and it's crazy how bad people can get played, from a social engineering perspective. It's just really tough, right? So that's again where zero trust comes in. It doesn't trust anybody, at any point, right? Like trusting your cat with the goldfish, or it's kind of like, I like my analogy, I think was pretty funny. It's like, hey, you start a relationship with somebody and you say like you love each other, but you have to check each other's phones every like 3 minutes or so. Right. So it's like,
That's not the relationships. That's not the relationship I want to be in, man.
So you have to figure out something else besides check.
Now, you said nefarious collusion. I think that'd be a great name for a band.
Hey,
if we were going to start a band, we'd call it Nefarious Collusion.
Put it on a vinyl, man.
I thought that'd be awesome.
We have everyone we need. We just need a singer. So you got the accent, man. Why don't we just do that? Like,
dude, if you heard my singing or saw my dancing, you would run for the hills and be like, no, this guy sucks. You'd even be surprised. You'd be surprised that I write dance music. Like, you'd be like, this guy writes dance music. I've seen him dance. Like, this guy should not be doing that shit.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah, so that's right. That's right. I think I knew that about you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, man. With all the synthesizers behind me, right? You think, and that's only the ones you can see. There's others that aren't even on camera.
Yeah, you just have to spell it out for me, right?
You're a smart guy, Kenny. You'll get there.
Yeah. No, I won't. I'll be smart about the things that nobody cares about. Hey, I made my way. Yeah. So, hey, man, like, so let's talk about. We have to talk about AI because you just have to. It's like you got to go through the AI tunnel and talk about it all the time.
I was thinking there's always going to be IA. It's like my intelligence is artificial,
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized it was the other way around and stuff. So one of my good friends, Teresa Payton, She has her own security firm and stuff. She's ex White House CIO, so she's got her shit together. She's got books, and I always tell her she was on John Oliver, but so therefore she is famous. She said something to me actually when she was on my podcast a while ago, and she was talking about within her family or circle of friends, they've agreed like a code, like a safe word, because at some point there's going to be a deep fake kids kidnapped video or audio, and it's like, okay, well, if it's really you, what's the code? And I'm like, man, isn't it crazy? Like, we almost need a second factor for our bloody kids and family and shit as we go into the future, because a lot of and there's already evidence of people being, threatened and asked for money because they've suggested they've kidnapped their kid. And then it's like, okay, but they don't, but they've got the copy of their voice because there's so much recordings on social media that it's easy to fake it. Now, my answer to that, man. Yeah, but my answer to that's quite funny. Well, it could be funny depending on whether they really have my kid or not. Because they'd be like, I've got your kid. And I'd be like, which one? And they'd be like, Tommy. I'm like, oh, no, you can keep that one. Thanks, man. And then just hang up the phone, I got two more. You can keep that one. Boom. Nice. But yeah, Teresa, she had said about like,
sorry, Tommy.
Code. No, sorry, Tommy, you're screwed, man. It's like, so she said about that, and I think, wow, it's great advice, but it's crazy that you need that advice. Oh, yeah. And then the bigger one for me is, first of all, it's going to speed up the attacks. If they're going to use AI to code quicker or to code better or to enable a lower bar of entry into the attacking world because it can be easier done with AI, right? That's going to mean that rather than being a highly skilled attacker, you can be a dumb attacker because, there's already things like ransomware as a service. So there's a lot of that stuff there. But the next thing is these phishing emails, they're not well crafted, and sometimes you can spot them easier. So some training's helpful, but in the future, they're going to be better crafted and they're going to be more targeted. They're going to be like, hey, Kenny, remember you and like, hey, Kenny, remember I was on your pod and talking about blah, 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 blah. And they're going to make it look like it truly is me emailing you because I know some shit that we talked about that So they're going to get very specific. They're going to pull data from other sources. So rather than there being one email to 1 million people with a 1% success rate, it's going to be 1 million emails to 1 million people with a 90+% success rate. And that's becoming more alarming. And you'll not be able to really train your way out of that. So we need the vendors to get their shit together and recognize that challenge and make sure there's more technical capabilities to safeguard against that.
And authenticity, yeah. No, my grandma, I remember I was at soccer practice for my kids. I was coaching his team. And I remember my grandma, she's like, Kenny, are you still in Costa Rica? I sent the money and like all this stuff, she was in Los Altos, I remember it. And I'm like, Grandma, like, no, I'm okay. She's like, oh, no, they told me that you were in jail and that you were in trouble and all this stuff. And I'm like, Grandma, oh, I'm like, okay. I'm like, dang, you have it in my grandma. But then my dad, like, we were like, at dinner. He's like, yeah, no, I have some Bitcoin. And I'm like, why do you have Bitcoin? He's like, oh, yeah, like I used it to like pay my IT guy. And I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, oh, gosh. I'm like, oh, no, Dad. And he's like, okay. Oh, anyways, it's so fun. It's so great. Okay, so exit question. How do people tell that it's really Kenny Scott and Dan Jones? How do they know for sure?
Well, if we talk a lot of nonsense, then they'll know it's us. If we sound really intelligent, then they'll be like, it's not those guys. It must be AI.
Yep.
So I think, now companies even like Adobe, we got to love our old crew, right? Some of these guys, they are building technology to understand when something is a deep fake. So the good thing is there are companies. I mean, shit, they build stuff to make a deep fake capable, enable it. So they've also been building for many years stuff where you can actually understand whether it's authentic or not. So I think a lot of companies need to get really more involved in that, especially the basic consumer stuff. Like I need Microsoft to know whether that email is fake or not, right? I mean, they're getting better, but I think we need them to get a lot better.
Well, I think a lot of the cybersecurity, I personally think it's a good area for these cybersecurity companies, that spend a lot of time, parsing out information to decide what's authentic or not. The whole zero trust thing. So I think it's a space where there should be innovation, from the vendors, to really do this. So that's, man. Dan.
And there will be, that's the thing is, look, opportunities are arising every day because of the adversity. The minute you get something like this, that's when people step up and they get some brainwaves and some great ideas,
That's right, man. Well, Dan, I look forward to doing this again. What would you say? I just want you, your advice. You've had a long career doing things from operations and IT. You went into cybersecurity. Tell us a little bit about how that experience is valuable, right? For how long it takes a long time to get it. And so what's your advice to young professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing for me, I used to try and work my way out of a job to enable getting more opportunities. But I think the one thing is you've got to let people know, hey, I'm here to help. I'm available. I want to get more involved. You've always got to remember you're learning. And even, I'm 30 plus years in this shit. And I still look at myself as a leader or a practitioner that I'm always learning and there's always more to learn. And I can always evolve how I conduct myself, how I work with others, how I partner with others. But at the end of it, the biggest thing is look, we are people that are trying to help a business be successful. And our goal as security practitioners is reduce that risk. So I think it's really understanding along this journey. My last 10 years has been more about how do I understand about the business and what's important to the business and how do I help achieve business goals and talk in business terms. So I think that's a big thing on the journey. At some point you go from being super duper technical to needing to add in your toolkit this business component.
Yep. So good, man. Well, we're going to do this again. I look forward to all the things that I'm going to learn from you, and we'll see you next. I mean, this is going to come out after this, but I'll have to see you at RSA next week. I'm excited to go get some grub with you and just catch up.
Catch up.
Yeah, all right, brother.
Hey, look, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, appreciate you, man. Talk to you later. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy. Cheers. See ya.
Cheers.